Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Hope you all are doing well and keeping safe. So thank you for joining us today for this webinar on Team Science Grants. My name is Himashri and I am a Senior Executive Science Communications at the DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Before we begin, let me give a quick introduction to what India Alliance is. So we are an independent, dynamic public charity that funds research in health and biomedical sciences in India. India Alliance invests in transformative ideas and supportive research ecosystems to advance discovery and innovation to improve health and well-being. It is funded by the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and the Wellcome Trust in UK. Today, we are here to talk about the recently launched Team Science Grants. Team Science Grants funds a team of researchers who bring together complementary skills, knowledge, and resources to address an important health challenge for India. So, before we begin the webinar, let me take you through a few housekeeping tips. First of all, please be aware that the webinar is being recorded and will be put up on YouTube in a few days. The video and microphone of the attendees will remain switched off during the event. You can leave a question anytime during the webinar in the questions box. Please make sure that the question only relates to the topic that is being covered in today's webinar. Also, there will be a question and answer session during which you can raise your virtual hand. You can see it in the screen, and we'll unmute you to ask your question. In case you find that the webinar has ended abruptly due to any technical glitch, please join back using the same registration link that you have used now. And now on your screens, you'll see the agenda for today's event. The webinar will have the following sessions. First, we are on the introduction session. Then we'll start with talking about Team Science grants, the information about what the grants are, who can apply, and the application process. For this, we have two grants advisors from India Alliance who will talk to you. Then we'll have a short question and answer session, after which will be joined by Team Science grantee, Dr. Thomas. And after the short discussion with him, we'll come to the conclusion. And if there are any more question and answers, we can take according to the time available. Next. Now we'll begin the first part of our presentation with a talk on Team Science grants by two of our grants advisors, Dr. Surinder Mohan and Dr. Divya Singh. So the first part of the presentation will be taken by Dr. Surinder Mohan. He is a grants advisor at India Alliance, and his role is to liaise with the scientific community and handle grants processes. He has a master's degree in biotechnology and has completed his PhD in infectious diseases from the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. I'll also introduce Dr. Divya Singh, who is also a grants advisor here. Divya has completed her PhD in cell and molecular biology from the Max Planck Institute of Molecular Physiology at Dortmund in Germany. She likes to engage with India Alliance Fellows, facilitate the research careers, and participate in outreach programs such as these. So now I'll invite Surender to begin his presentation, and then next Divya will take it up. Thank you. Over to you, Surender.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I am Surinder and I'm a grants advisor at DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance. In this presentation today, I'll talk about our flagship grant competition, the Team Science Grant. It's also, or TSG in short. I'll be talking about the key requirements and the eligibility conditions, and then hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Divya Singh, who will take you through the application format and the key points for submitting a competitive grant application. India Alliance offers these grants for researchers to support a collaborative team to address an important health challenge in India. I'll turn off my video to save some bandwidth. Please continue to add your questions to the chat box and we will address them. The, the Team Science grant and the Clinical and Public Health Research Center grants, these are the two flagship grants which are launched together every year and are quite similar in terms of objectives and funding. While the CRC grants are institutional grants with focus on capacity building and developing the clinical and public health research ecosystem, the TSG grant are more team-centric and funds a team of individuals for addressing an important biomedical problem. The remit of TSG program is to foster interdisciplinary collaborative research, which aims to address an important health challenge for India. The Team Science grant will fund team of researchers who bring together complementary skills, knowledge, and resources to address an important health challenge or important biomedical problem that is relevant to India. The project should be multi-institutional as well as it should be interdisciplinary in its approach. And we also fund high-risk, high-reward research work as well. Under this scheme, funding can be requested up to 10 crores Indian rupees for a 5-year project duration. These 10 crores will also include 10% institutional overheads. The India Alliance Team Science grants are one of the most generous and grant in the country. It's also one of the most prestigious grants in the community as well. The grantees, in addition to receiving funds, they become part of huge India Alliance network, which provides opportunities to interact, network, and collaborate with other fellows and grantees. India Alliance organizes annual conclave for its grantees, and all investigators of the grant are invited for this event. So coming back to the funding, the projects which are less than 5 years duration, or if it's over 10 crores, would be deemed ineligible. So a minimum of 3 investigators should participate, including one as principal investigator, who would lead and manage the team. A minimum of 2 institutions should be included, and no more than 2 investigators can be from one institution. The team should bring in diverse expertise from different disciplines to address the proposed research problem. The proposal should address an important health challenge for India, and it should be multi-institutional as well as interdisciplinary in approach. So the application should clearly outline a resource sharing plan and provide an appropriate sustainability plan once the funding is over. Applicants must also demonstrate their complementarity, the need and added value that this proposed collaboration would bring, and which may bring about improvements and advances that would otherwise not be possible for individual PIs working alone. We strongly encourage PIs to include relevant co-PIs with diverse expertise and who can add value to the proposed work. While there is no upper limit for adding co-PIs, it is important to identify appropriate co-PIs and also strongly justify in the application the reason for opting them. PIs can ensure that there is no missing expertise when they are submitting an application. Having said that, there is no age or nationality bar, but PIs must be based in India, while co-PIs can be based overseas. All participating investigators should have a tenure at the host institution for the entire duration of the grant and have a track record of achievements, including securing competitive grants or fellowships. With respect to collaborating with institutions, please note all the designated host institutions within India or overseas on this grant application must be not-for-profit and must be financially eligible for funding. This is a mandatory requirement for submitting a grant application to India Alliance. So in case of an award, the office will require certain documents to confirm the not-for-profit status of the organization. You may refer to our website to know more about the requirements. So the PI will lead and manage the team of investigators and should be working at or willing to move to a not-for-profit institution in India. The PI should have a PhD or MD or MBBS, MS, or even MPH or any equivalent degree with at least 5 years of experience in running an independent research group or a lab. Whereas the co-PIs can be from overseas not-for-profit institutions. In case the co-PI is from India, they should also be working at a not-for-profit institution. The co-PI should have at least 3 years of experience in running an independent lab or a group in addition to the previously mentioned degree requirements. We strongly encourage good geographical diversity, a good gender balance in the team structure. We also encourage you to include more international collaboration when identifying team members. This really adds value to the application. Funding can be requested for salary support of PIs and co-PIs. In such cases, a letter from the institution is required confirming that the PI or the co-PI is required to raise salary support from extramural grants. Please note that co-PIs who are outside India cannot request for salary support. Funds can also be requested for hiring support staff, purchase of equipment and research supplies, or even for strengthening the research management structure at the host institutions. Please note that all budgetary requirements, that includes salary support manpower, should commensurate with the proposed project and must be supported with strong scientific justification. Now, selecting a good team is a crucial aspect when submitting an application. To assemble a good team and identify potential players, the team must ensure that all the investigators participating in the grant must demonstrate a good track record of achievements, which is appropriate for their career stage. This would include securing competitive grants and competitive fellowships in their career. Having said that, the investigator must also have a tenure at the host institution for the entire duration of the grant. Now, I would like to highlight a few key points that may help you submit a competitive application. The first is motivation. The team should be highly motivated and committed. There should be strong institutional support when submitting an application to India Alliance under the scheme. The India Alliance does give weightage to the scientific productivity of the applicants, like publications and track record of mentoring research aspirants. The question addressed must be an important biomedical question relevant to the Indian context. and it must be well supported with feasible research plan and appropriate sustainability plan. The proposal must also highlight the value of proposed collaboration, the translational aspects of the proposed work, and also include the mentorship plan for its support staff. The team should demonstrate the ownership of the idea and availability of required expertise. And they should also include if there are any pilot data related to the proposed work. Weightage is also given to teams trying to move out of their comfort zones and propose an interdisciplinary research project. We look for good grantsmanship, which include language, format of writing, and plagiarism. Plagiarism is taken very seriously at India Alliance, and relatively higher plagiarized text, including self-plagiarism, may lead to rejection. So while all these aspects must be well thought through, it is important to jot down ideas and write a good proposal. Good grantsmanship is always an added weightage. So uh, to include a final point, it's important to provide strong justification for all choices in your application which you make. Coming to the application cycle, we have a 3-level screening system in our application cycle. So once the application is submitted, the office scrutinizes them for eligibility and checks for grantsmanship and plagiarism. Once the initial checks are done, these applications are then reviewed by the grant screening committee. This committee then gives specific feedback on each application, and based on the feedback received, the committee shortlists the application to the next round. Applications declined at this stage generally receive specific feedback to improve their proposal. Then the ones which are shortlisted, they are then sent to international peer review. This is a detailed and elaborate review process, which is followed by the review by the funding committee. All peer-reviewed applications would normally be brought to the interview committee unless recommended otherwise by the funding committee. For example, if an application may be rejected or declined based on an unsatisfactory external review, the funding committee would interview the PI, and if desired, up to 2 co-PIs on each application can also participate in the interview process. So this entire processing, since the receipt of full application to the interview stage, is approximately 10 months. Here, I would like to highlight the resubmission policy. If an application is unsuccessful after the funding committee review, and in the interview stage, the PI cannot reapply to the scheme as PI, but they can still apply as co-PI in any future round. However, if an application has been declined at the screening stage, this condition would not be applicable, and they are still eligible to apply again with a revised proposal. Here is a network map of institutions which were awarded the TSG grant since 2019. This slide shows the representation of areas of biomedical, clinical, and public health science that are covered through all our India Alliance program. The broad remit of India Alliance scheme is to support biomedical research that is relevant to human and animal welfare. Within this broad remit, our grantees are from a variety of fields ranging from molecular biology to infectious diseases, structural biology, and bioinformatics to public health. So this layout is a representation of the various areas of our funding. So we request prospective applicants to visit our website for the updated dates and deadlines. The current TSG round was launched on 20th February, and the deadline for submitting the complete application is 21st April. In case you have any queries, please feel free to write to us to team.science@indiaalliance.org. Now I'll hand it over to Dr. Divya, who will be explaining you about the application format.
Okay, I hope I'm audible to everybody. Just 1 second, please. Am I audible now? So thank you so much, Surinder, for taking the audience through the provisions of this scheme and explaining to them what the reasons behind launching this scheme were. So I am Divya, and I am going to take all the audience members through the application in detail and try and caution you to areas that you can potentially improve on to be able to submit a competitive grant application. So let us begin our talk on the full application format. For the purposes of saving bandwidth, I will also be turning off my camera, but please feel free to write down the questions that come to you during the webinar, and we will try and answer them towards the end of the webinar. Okay, so first of all, let me tell you how you can access the Team Science grant application. So the path to do so is mentioned on your slides right now. When you visit the India Alliance website, you will find a tab at the very top, which is called Research Funding. If you click on that, you should then next click on India Alliance Grants, which will then allow you to click on Team Science Grants, which will open this page. In this page, you need to access application process, which will allow you to, and then you scroll down in this page and you see that the pro forma for the Team Science grant application is available here. When you click this, you will be able to download a Word document, which is the format of the TSG application. And I will next walk you through the different sections of this application and try and advise you on how you could fill them out. For the reference of audience who was not able to join this webinar, as Himashri pointed out in the very beginning, a recording of this webinar will be made available on the website and on YouTube, and you will be able to access the link also from here where you registered for the webinar. So while the general instructions in the application are quite detailed, I will highlight a few key points here. I request you all to read through the instructions provided in the general instruction sheet, which is the first page of the Word document that you download, as well as the instructions embedded within each section before you fill them out. All the questions in the application are mandatory, and applicants should not leave any section blank. In case there are any questions which are not relevant to you, please write not applicable. Incomplete applications are summarily rejected. Please use only the prescribed font size and line spacing throughout the applicant. This is a very important aspect of grantsmanship, and I earnestly request you all to consider this very seriously. The applicants are requested to read the scheme-related information and IA policies while filling the application. The relevant links are embedded in the application form itself for your reference. Please note that funding cannot be requested for any regulatory clinical trials. So as I told you earlier, these are the different sections of the application starting from the top sheet, and on top of that there are 14 other sections which are mandatory for applicants to complete the application and submit. Please note that you will have to submit each of these sections in the order mentioned here. We'll go over each section in detail, and I will now share some key points to remember when you fill out the application. So the first is the top sheet. This is something you can fill out at the very end, but it is to be appended to the beginning of the application. On the very top is the space for the reference number. Now this is added by the office post submission, so we request you to leave this row blank. We next ask you to enter the total budget on your application very carefully. Please make sure that this value matches with the value in the budget section, which we will discuss in some detail later. The details of the PIs, the co-PIs, etc., the host institution city must be entered against the respective titles. In case you have more than 3 co-PIs in the application, please copy the format and paste it below in the table. Ensure that all the participants, the PI as well as the co-PIs, are listed in this table. Do not add any collaborators, any mentors or advisors or sponsor to this sheet. This is the section through which you briefly introduce each investigator and where you establish the importance of a team approach for the proposed project. This is section 1, the team composition and management. Applicants are requested to include information of the PIs and co-PIs in the format provided. Please do spend some time filling out the role of each investigator in the project and do not exceed the word limit. The application by default will have space to enter the details of 1 PI and 3 co-PIs. So if you want to add more, please replicate each section. Make sure that the kind of expertise required on the proposal is included. A big team does not always mean a good team, so make sure you're judicious about the choice of co-PIs in your proposal. In the same section, an important question comes under time commitment, where we request you to ensure that time commitment is listed for all the PIs and co-PIs in the application. If required, please add more columns to the table. All the investigators must consider the percent of time they would give to the proposed work and should state their time commitments towards other research and non-research responsibilities. For your convenience, formula have been included in this table, which will aid you in calculating the correct time commitment. Now we come to the second section, which is the proposal section. Please ensure that the title of the proposal is the same as on the top sheet and that there are no deviations anywhere in the application. The project summary and lay summaries are very important aspects of the grant application. The research summary, which are for an expert audience, must be elaborate and should include the key goals and outcomes of the proposed work. Applicants should ensure that the information is clearly presented and within the prescribed word limit. Please note that India Alliance may publish the synopsis of the awarded grant on our website or third-party websites. So spend your time and draft a competitive research summary as well as lay summary. I will now take you briefly through the guidelines that you must follow while drafting a competitive proposal. We request you to go through the instruction and guidelines provided before this section is to be appended. Now, first, the proposal needs to have the sections which are mentioned in the instructions. These include the background, the aims and key questions, strategy and work plan, details of the study design, etc. As these are multi-institutional generous grants, there are sections for a research management plan, clearly identified milestones, and a sustainability plan. An important part of the proposal is the Gantt chart that clearly shows the timelines. And again, in light of multiple investigators, the locations where the different aims will be carried out. Now, below the instructions, there are guidelines for how the proposal should be formatted. It must not exceed 5,000 words. Additional information such as prelim data should be placed immediately after the proposal and should not exceed 3 pages. These additional aspects must be clearly labeled if included in the proposal. For references, Full citations should be provided in the Vancouver referencing style. Once the proposal is ready, applicants are required to insert their proposal after this description, and this proposal should end before the subsequent CV section. Please note that all of these instructions are designed to help you craft a competitive proposal, and the contents of these sections are often commented upon by international peer reviewers and the selection committee. So it's very crucial to adhere to these instructions. So the next section is that of the series of the PIs and the co-PIs. So this typically starts with the PI CV and then goes on to the CVs of the co-PI 1, co-PI 2, and so on. Please do not add CVs of your collaborators or mentors in this application. Do not forget to write the name of the PI at the beginning. Also mention the appropriate role of each PI in the CV. So if you are a PI, you should include principal investigator here, and if you are co-PI, you should write co-PI 1, 2, 3 as applicable. As for the host institution and sponsor, the name of the host institution must be clear, and also the sponsor information. The sponsor is typically an established senior researcher at the host institution, which could be the head of the department or director of the sponsoring institution. And this individual should have the administrative authority to sign up to India Alliance's award conditions should an award be made. Please note that anyone participating in your application as a PI or a co-PI or any other application in the same round cannot act as sponsor. In such cases, we request you to identify a new sponsor. Now, a few investigators may have dual affiliations. Please mention here if you are affiliated to any other organization. For question 3 and 4, please be very specific when you mention your highest degree. For question 4, where applicants need to mention the number of years running an independent research group, please provide a numerical value. If you have had a career break, there is space in the application to also explain that. Lower in the same section, applicants need to provide details of the previous posts that they have held, and this should be in reverse chronological order. This is very important. We request you to also put the names of the supervisors that you have had while in these positions. A supervisor need not be somebody you have been reporting to, but just somebody who has been over you in authority. The same also goes for education and training. We request you to fill in all the information required in both these tables in reverse chronological order. The description in question 7 and 8 must be detailed and clear and should be within the prescribed word limit, and you need to provide a summary of your scientific career to date and list your experience which is relevant to the proposed work. Now, this is where you enter, where each PI or co-PI will enter the research output in the last 5 years. Guidelines for how to format the list are provided in the application. Please make sure that you provide accurate information and indicate authorship according to the rules mentioned here, which is to use an asterisk to highlight if you are a corresponding author and underline your name if you are a joint first author. Under this, we would request you to upload peer-reviewed publications, preprints, inventions, and patents, and make sure that the list does not exceed 10. In the next section in the CV, we request you to enter details of financial support that you may have received in the last 5 years, with the most recent first. Please also indicate the number of hours per week you spend on currently active projects. We request you to make sure that you enter the data in the tabular format shown above and not as a text box. And now this is the similar format that is required to enter the CV details of co-PIs at the, so request you to mention the name of the co-PI at the top and the role that they play in the application. Please pay attention that the instructions are embedded in each section, so adhere to them. If you have more co-PIs, please copy paste this format and only use this. Remember to retain all the questions in the CV section for all the PIs. We now come to a very important part of the application, which is the budget. The most important thing to bear in mind before filling out these sections are the India Alliance costing policies, which are available on our website and are also linked in the application. These policies will tell you about what are the permitted costs and which are disallowed. For example, funds cannot be requested for developing physical spaces like labs or buildings. Make sure that all the budgetary requests are commensurate with the proposed project and are supported with strong scientific justifications. Now you must see that this section begins with the budget overview table. Once the budget for each head in this section is calculated, please copy the value and paste it in this table. Ensure that the values are correct and the net total does not exceed 10 crores. In various parts in this section, we have provided formula where required. We request you to use the formula to calculate the total costs. In case of any cost mismatch, the office will consider the lower cost only. Do ensure that there are no cost mismatches in the application before submission. The budget allocation table is a very important table in this section. As these are multi-institutional awards and research may be carried out at different locations, we request you to provide details of fund sharing. PIs must specify the fund sharing for each participating institution. Do note that funds can only be allocated to the PI and it will be the responsibility of the lead host institution to set up subcontracts, transfer funds, maintain accounts, and report these on behalf of all the participating institutions. Do not request funds for collaborators or mentors. This is not allowed. And also note, as my colleague Surinder already mentioned, if the project includes an overseas co-PI, the lead host institution should be capable of carrying out the same processes and requirements with its foreign counterparts as well. Again, as mentioned in the previous section, according to the eligibility, the PIs and co-PIs must hold an academic or research post and have a salaried position for the duration of the award period. In case your position requires you to secure all or part of your salary from extramural funding, you may request for salaries for PIs. However, you should strongly justify such requests, and we would also need requests to be supplemented by a letter from the host institution that confirms that part of your salary needs to be raised from extramural grants. Such a letter could be attached to the last section, which we will come to later. Please note that salary support cannot be sought for co-PIs based at an overseas institution. So next we come to what are the different headings under which you can request for funding. The first is the support staff. PIs can request support staff under different categories in this section. They must ensure that the salary requested is in line with the recent Government of India guidelines. For each category of staff requested, please provide a point-wise justification in the box below. The second heading under which you may request for funds are the materials and consumables. Please provide a line-wise description of the material and consumables required under this table. Do note that you need to group your items in broad categories such as chemicals, kits, etc., and not ask for costs for individual items. Costs must not be repeated under this table, and there must be itemized justification for each material and consumable requested in the box below. Now we come to the equipment costs that you can request. For equipment, applicants are required to list each equipment as a separate item. To calculate the total amount for each equipment, please add the cost of equipment under each head plus the maintenance cost requested for specific duration. A formula to help you with this calculation is already provided in this table. In case there are other sources of contribution for any equipment purchase, you may subtract that amount from the total cost. Please do not forget to mention the location where the equipment would be placed. And note that maintenance costs for pre-existing equipment at any host institution cannot be requested. There are specific sections where you can request for access charges. This may be to use any equipment or facility which is not present at your host institution, but for which upon payment of nominal charges, you are able to use that particular equipment. We request you to specify the number of units, which could either be per day or per hour, and the cost allocated to per unit, and calculate the total access charges that are requested for your experiments. Another heading that you may request for costs under are the animals and animal associated costs. Here we request you to list the animal species that you require to purchase, for example, the purchase cost per animal, and should there be any maintenance costs associated with this, we also request you to provide that. Similarly, as for the equipment, there is a formula here that will allow you to calculate the total cost requested for animal purchase. Please make sure that you provide a justification for animal purchase costs. In case animals are required for your project, but costs are not being requested for them, please provide justification of how those animals will be procured in the justification box. The animal associated costs under question 7 are to request for training, environmental enrichment, costs of animal license, etc. Also make sure that a strong justification is provided for this. Under miscellaneous costs, you may request for costs such as for purchase of software, which does not really fall under any other category. Again, make sure that there is itemized justification present for each item listed here. Travel costs can cover requests for travel for PIs as well as support staff employed on the grant to attend research meetings, conferences, symposiums, other host institutions for collaborative visits, fieldwork, and sample collection. Again, the justification should be commensurate with the costs requested. Now, in recognition of the fact that unanticipated costs may arise during the execution of the project, India Alliance provides for a sum of 20 lakh under the flexible funding allowance. Please note that this amount is fixed and should not be changed by the team when filling out the application. Once you have requested for costs under the appropriate budget heads, please enter the total in the budget overview table that was showed in the beginning. I request you to double check to make sure that the correct values are entered and the total budget is calculated to ensure that it doesn't exceed 10 crores. Next, we come to the 5th section, which is the data management plan. As the data for a team science grant is generated at multiple locations, it is a very good idea to share a strong data sharing and data management plan. India Alliance policies regarding data management and sharing are available on our website, and we recommend that you go through it. A few proposals which require or generate a lot of data, for example, machine learning based proposals or high throughput genomics, the reviewers would like to see how the team is managing and sharing data within the team, as well as how you wish to make your results or data available to others in your community. So this is the section where you can enter details of your plan to do so, and also mention if there are conditions to this. Further, if you are embarking upon research that may lead to translation of your work or lead to translatable results such as patents, you may also write about the IP, intellectual property protection rules that you have existing in the host institution, and any thoughts that you have about how to protect this IP. The next section is the public engagement plan. Now, India Alliance strongly encourages applicants to incorporate a detailed public engagement plan in their applications. We request you to not take this section lightly and spend some time to think how the proposed research, its significance, and outcomes will be disseminated among the public. This may include ways such as workshops, public seminars, collaboration with ASHA workers, etc. Please adhere to the word limit always. An important section that comes next in the application is that involving human participation. Applicants must fill this section if they plan to include human experiments, experiments with human stem cells, biological samples, and/or personal data in the proposed study. Please fill out information regarding what kind of human biological samples you may be working with, like blood, serum, or biopsy samples, etc. Also, please explicitly state all the authorities from whom ethics approvals will be required and that have been or will be obtained. If your project requires access to clinical facility, we request you to provide the name of the clinician along with the hospital name and address. As Surinder already mentioned, a letter of support will be required from the clinical collaborator confirming access to samples, and such a letter may be added to the application in the attachment section. Also, this is the place to include information about the number of human participants, highlight any selection criteria, and statistical data which is relevant to your study. Please note that reviewers often comment very critically upon the data that is entered in this section, and that if you do not have any aspect of human experimentation in your proposal, please do not leave this section empty, but write NA. Similarly, the next section which appears in the application is that for providing details of animal experimentation. Please read the guidelines embedded within the application very carefully before filling out this section. As India Alliance believes in the 3 R's of reduce, recycle, and reuse, we take animal experiments very seriously. Therefore, we request applicants to soundly justify why animal use is necessary and if there are possible alternative approaches. This is also where you provide power analysis or animal number calculations for the proposed animal studies. Please ensure that the number indicated here matches with the number in the proposal as well as in the budget section, in case costs are requested for animal purchase or maintenance. As in the previous section, if there are no aspects of animal experimentation in your application, please write NA. Do not leave any section blank. The 9th section in the application is on risks of research misuse. We advise applicants to think through potential risks involved in their proposed work and the steps that they will take to mitigate those risks. The 10th section is regarding conflicts of interest. If applicants hold positions in for-profit commercial entities, we request you to declare them here. You may find our policy on grant holders' relationship with commercial organization on our website. We next come to section 11, which are the undertakings from PIs. Please note that this is a mandatory undertaking. This basically requires all the PIs to attest to the fact that all the sections in the application are appropriately filled and appear in the sequence mentioned. All PIs are requested to sign this undertaking form. They are advised to sign it in a single sheet. Please note that only wet signatures or scans of wet signatures will be accepted. Digital signature formats will not be accepted. An important section that comes next is that of the institutional undertaking. All the participating institutions must provide separate institutional undertakings. Each undertaking must be provided on institutional letterhead only. Please copy the template provided in the form to your letterhead. The template must be filled and attested by the sponsor or head of the institution. Do ensure that the signature of the sponsor is clear, includes their designation, and also please include the office stamp. Please note that there's a part here where you can include information about the contribution that the host institution is agreeing to make to this project beyond usual support for space and utilities. And also note that this is something that reviewers comment critically upon, as these are generous grants. They would like to see institutions committing to make to support these applications to the best of their ability. The last section in the application is the attachment section, and there are a few mandatory documents that need to be attached here only if they are applicable to you. For example, if you have requested for any equipment which is worth more than 50 lakh rupees, a quotation must be attached under this section. Or if your position requires you to raise salary from extramural funding, then as mentioned earlier, a letter of support from your institution must be attached. Applicants may also attach a list of collaborators with details of their names, affiliations, and their contribution to the proposed work. In case the proposed work involves the use and transport of patient samples, a letter of support from clinical collaborator can also be attached to this section. Please note that you should not attach any letters of recommendation, letters of support from proposed collaborators, details of additional publications, or any other CV details in this section. And the next section provides an opportunity to the applicants to suggest names of reviewers and also identify potential conflicts which are counted as restrictions. So you may suggest the names of up to 3 potential reviewers who you feel are appropriate to evaluate the proposal. You also can suggest any restricted reviewers who you may have a conflict of interest with. Please clearly specify if they are a potential reviewer or restricted reviewer in the first column, and also include the reason for adding their names. A suggestion would be to include the names of potential reviewers with diverse expertise that can comment on different aspects of your proposal. Do not add the names of individuals who are fulfilling any role in your application, like co-PI, collaborator, mentor, sponsor, etc. Now we come to the steps that you must follow for final submission of your application. Once the application is ready for submission, please remove the very first page, which includes the general instructions. Then organize the documents in the given order, section 1 to section 14, and convert the Word file to PDF. Please ensure that the file size does not exceed 20 MB. To reiterate, please also make sure that each section starts on a new page. We request you to send your completed application to team.science@indiaalliance.org. Once the office receives your application, an acknowledgement email will be sent to you with a reference number. If you do not receive any email within 2 working days, please follow up. Note that this is a mandatory step, and only then will the submission process be complete. For any queries, as mentioned, please write to the email ID that appears on your screen right now.
So thank you, Divya, and thank you, Surinder, for taking us through all the details of TSG applications and processes. I am sure there are a lot of questions, and I can see one hand raised up with questions. So let me check. Okay, now I have Moshmi Mondal who wants to ask questions. She has, so I'll unmute her. I have unmuted you, Mosmi, so you can go ahead with your.
Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me? Hi, this is Moushmi here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the description and letting everybody go through this process. While I understand that international OPI cannot claim for his or her salary, can he or she get financial support for hiring staff and other research activities in the international center?
Mosmi, can you repeat your question? Actually, the first part was cut off.
While a OPI who is based outside of India, he or she cannot claim for his salary, but can he request for support staff salary who will be based outside of India?
What she's asked is whether she can ask for support staff salary if she's based outside India, and for the support staff who is based in India, can they request for salary support? So
Okay, so
Divya,
OPIC,
Surendra?
So I'll take that question. So salary support can be requested for all support staff who are based in India as well as overseas. My point about salary support for OPIs is only for OPIs who are residing outside India. That is not permitted. Whereas for support staff, they can request salary support. There are no concerns.
okay, whether based in India or outside. Okay, thank you.
Add to Dr. Mohan's point, any request for support staff that are based overseas must be accompanied by strong justification because the salaries may look different from those expected for support staff based in India. So as long as you provide strong scientific justification for support staff salaries based outside of India, they are acceptable.
Okay, thank you so much. Also,
we have another question in the chat box, which is, can I apply for Team Science grant when I have another active India Alliance grant? Surendra, if I may request you to take that.
Yeah, you can still continue to apply for Team Science grant, but you may need to justify your time commitment towards the new grant, proposed grant, as well as the this sorry, yeah, you just need to justify your time commitment in your application. The justification should be strong.
You are.
Thank you. I am Dr. Sachdev from PGI Chandigarh. So basically, I work in the transfusion services, what commonly we understand as blood donation or blood center. So I've been granted a patent for decreasing vasovagal reactions. Can I apply for having to develop the prototype and the proof of principle concept? Take it for years. Can we apply for translation of patent into practice?
Thank you for that question. Yes, you can still continue to apply for developing a prototype, but please be aware that you may have to consider the intellectual property aspects. We only fund not-for-profit organization, and we do not permit any commercial involvement of any commercial organizations in the grant.
So my organization is an institute of national importance. It's directly under the government of India, under the health minister. But obviously, I will have to outsource the making of prototype to someone.
Yes. Yeah, my point was that, you know, when you're outsourcing the prototype to another organization, that may be considered seriously for evaluation.
So I can apply. Obviously, some biomedical engineer will make this device. I cannot. It may be a blood donor. It is related to the blood donor couch.
There is another question in the chat box. Is it mandatory to have active research lab experience for all co-PIs? So I can take this question up. According to the eligibility criteria for this scheme, all OPIs must have 3 years of experience at least to lead an independent research group. So we would request you to justify the period that you may feel you have actively pursued research and led independent research of your own in the justification, and then you will be eligible. Can a PI request for support staff or a research manager from a not-for-profit institute outside his or her institute? Yes, the question is, can a PI request for support staff or a research manager from a not-for-profit institute outside his or her institute?
That may not be permitted. The support staff should be working under the co-PI or the PI directly. Yeah. The support staff should be directly involved in the project and should be associated with the host institution. I hope that answers your question. If not, you can always write to us and we'll get back to you with a detailed response. There's another question which I would like to take. What percentage of total funds can be allocated to the co-PI based out of India? Is there any cap? So this is a very good question. There's no cap set by India Alliance as such, but we suggest you to consider the total funds that will be transferred to the external institution. You may need the majority of funds should be allocated to the Indian institutions. That is a very important aspect. So you may need to consider how much funds you need to transfer to the external institution, and you may need to provide a strong justification for it.
I can see another hand up. So Tina Raval wants to ask a question. So I just unmute. So can you ask your question, Tina?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Mohan and Divya, for giving us an elaborative and descriptive description about the grant. My two questions are related to budget, and one is on the advisory group. I have posted that in the question Q&A box as well. So wanted to check, there are guidelines available for the JRF and SRF, like for the support staff. If there is any guidelines which needs to be followed for co-PI or for the co-Is, and who will be the part of the project management team. So one is that, and second, there are instructions about the host institutions should demonstrate a commitment by supporting the project with cash or a kind support. So are there any specific guidelines, or the time commitment from the staff would suffice the requirement? And the last is, on the advisory board, is there any number which we need to limit, or if we have a previously, like, because if we are working on a building on the existing research, what we have just completed, and we have an advisory board for that project, so can we continue with that advisory board, or are there any guidelines on the numbers or anything specific to the advisory board? So these are the three queries which I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just missed the first two questions, but I'll answer the last one. The advisory board, there is no limit as such. You can include as many experts as you want who you see fit to review your proposal and every year and submit a report based on your progress. Having said that, the advisory board committee requirement is not required at this stage. So once the application is shortlisted for interview, we will send an email requesting for this information.
Okay.
Could you just repeat the first two questions if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. So just on the advisory group, yeah, that's clear. And is there any minimum number to the advisory board, or there is no like 2 members or 3 members can also form the advisory member group?
Yes, as I said, there is no limit. The advisory, you can have as many members as you want, who you see will be very good for evaluating your progress.
Okay. And in terms of the budget, my previous questions were, one is on the salaries of the staff members other than JRF and the SRF, because the guidelines gives us the specification about the JRF and SRF. Is there any guidelines which needs to be followed for the other salaries? And second is, the host institution should demonstrate commitment by supporting the project with cash or kind. So the kind contribution can be with the time contribution of the PIs, COIs, or the project team, or are there any specific guidelines for this host institutions?
Sorry, that's again the second question. There was some disturbance. I could not hear it full.
I have
As for
posted
your first
the question
question,
in the
the
chat as well.
guidelines you may refer to your host institution guidelines. These are the guidelines which they have set for each support staff. So India Alliance does not provide any specific guidelines. You may also refer to the guidelines provided by the Government of India, the salary support for support staff.
Okay.
And the last question, I would request you to write to us, and we'll promise to get back to you within 3 days with a response.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohan. I have posted the questions in the chat box as well for ready reference.
By Sayantan Banerjee. Can a PI apply for a team science grant as well as a CRC grant in the same year?
This is a very good question. So only one application can be submitted by a PI. India Alliance will not accept multiple applications from the same PI. And I would like to add that if a PI is submitting an application, they cannot be a co-PI in another application. That is also not permitted.
Thank you, Surinder and Divya, for taking up the questions. I believe there are more questions and more, curiosity among the people who are participants. So you can, some of the answers will be answered in the question box. And for detailed answers, please do write to the email ID provided, and we will get back to you within 3 to 4 working days. And you can also call our office by going, you can find the phone numbers at indiaalliance.org. So now, without further delay, we'll now go to the next session of our program today. And now we have Dr. Thomas J. Pukadil with us. So Dr. Thomas is, can you, are you able to log in? Yeah. So I'll just introduce Dr. Thomas to you before he begins his session. So he'll talk about his experiences as an awardee of the TSG grants, the Team Science grants. He's a professor at IISER Pune, and he was awarded the Team Science grant in 2021. He has his PhD he has done his PhD in membrane biology from CCMB in Hyderabad, and was a postdoctoral fellow at the Scripps Research Institute before he joined IISER Pune. He has received several awards, including his current Rahul Bajaj Chair Professorship at IISER Pune itself, and also he has to his name several papers and in many journals, as well as a patent to its name. So I now invite Dr. Thomas to talk about his experiences of applying for the grant and getting it. So I hope Dr. Thomas, you can log in.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
While we wait for him to log in, let me just remind you that along with TSG grants, as we had you had just heard, that there is a CRC grant, the Clinical and Public Health Research Center grants that are that was launched at the same time, and the deadlines is also the same. So please go to our website, visit our website, and to learn more about this grant. Tomorrow at the same time at 4 o'clock, we have a webinar which will explain you the details about that grant. So please, if you are interested in applying, or if you know anybody who's interested in applying for that grant, please do refer them to the link on. We'll be publishing it through our channel. And also the highlights of today's program, mainly the all the sessions that were taken, the presentations and the process of application will be uploaded on our YouTube channel in 1 to 2 days. So do not be that there is quite a lot of information, so do not worry about missing out on any information. You will be able to revisit any point that you have missed and go through it. And of course, we are always there to help you out with any questions you may have.
So, Dipanvita, can you hear me?
I think we'll just wait for 1 to 2 minutes to see if the Dr. Thomas can join in.
Yeah, Thomas.
Right. Firstly, good evening to all of you, and thanks, Surinder, for the invitation. I think Surinder had asked me to just describe my experience with the application for the Team Science grant, and maybe it's best had in a discussion mode, but briefly, just to tell you a little bit of the background. We are a team that's comprised of a molecular dynamics simulation expert who's Dr. Anand Srivastava from the Molecular Biophysics Unit at IISc Bangalore, and an imaging specialist who's Dr. Senthil Arumugam from the Monash University. And our proposal is centered around understanding a class of proteins that have had quite a bit of relevance to human physiology and pathology, but there's very little mechanistic insight into what functions do they carry out and provide to cells. So the team was put together with the emphasis of bringing these three diverse disciplines. I, of course, am a biochemist by training, and we focus quite a bit on understanding protein function through biochemical means. The emphasis of the proposal was to bring together three different expertise in order to understand what these proteins do for the cell. So, and the reason why these three approaches are important is because what is currently known about these proteins is largely phenomenological. By that I mean there are just correlation studies attributed to the presence or absence of these proteins in different cells. And the other interesting aspect about these proteins is there are a couple of isoforms that are present that are expressed in most cell types. Biochemically, what we have seen is these isoforms don't behave the same way in terms of their enzymatic functions. And from a purely protein mechanism standpoint, simulations become very important in order to give us insights into why is a certain isoform different in function compared to another isoform. And the protein we are studying, the family of proteins that we are studying is referred to as the EH domain containing protein. These are ATPases that bind membranes and sort of oligomerize on the membrane. and they are linked to a lot of vesicular transport reactions, primarily endocytic recycling reactions in the cell. And that's exactly where the expertise from Dr. Arumugam comes in, where we should in principle be able to gauge the distribution of these proteins in cells. And because vesicular transport typically involves an extremely dynamic budding and fusion of vesicles, conventional microscopy-based approaches to gather dynamics of these compartments is not very useful. And Dr. Arumugam brings in his expertise on things like lattice light sheet to address this problem. But the real reason to bring a team of this kind together is because neither of us independently are likely to be able to solve the questions listed in the proposal, and it requires a team effort in order to address this. And I think that is one of the reasons why we got together and we decided to approach the Alliance for this grant. If there are any specific questions on how,
I'll just unmute, and if you have any question for you. So Shayantan Banerjee has the hand up. So if you have any question for Dr. Thomas, yeah.
So my question was that whether for different grants, like the CRC grant and the Team Science grant, can one PI apply, like I have applied for a Team Science grant, can I have a separate application for the CRC grant this year or not? That was my question.
You're planning for to apply for both TSG and CRC. Yeah, as we mentioned, that only one application can be accepted as from a given PI. So we will not be able to accept multiple applications in a given round.
Thank you.
I hope that clarifies your query.
Thank you.
There is a question by Mahadev Singh Sen. He asks for tips and experience in TSG. So maybe Dr. Thomas, he can take this question up.
yeah, Mahadev, I think so. I must admit it's not unlike many other grants which rely on a collaboration. I think the emphasis should be more on the scientific aspect of the proposal and why does it require a team effort to address the proposal, the questions in the proposal. For instance, during the review process, the review per se was very similar to the CRG type of review for the intermediate and senior fellowships. I think the panel is again very interested in the science behind the proposal and how is it that coming together as a team would benefit the science. What that also means is that the expertise that the team members should bring to the table should be they should be complementary. It's in other words, you know, it's almost as if the team wouldn't function if any one member were not a participant of that team. So so that gets you to I think what that got us to do was to emphasize on what are the skill sets that we can bring forward as far as this team is concerned. But I would say that I think we tend to come together as a team very organically, it shouldn't require any additional effort to put a team together just for the Team Science grant. I think even the DBT, DSTs, the SERV applications which involve a consortium or a collaboration, these are the same kind of concerns that the panel will have. So it's a good idea to think carefully about the team and why is it that the questions that you've listed in the proposal will require a team to function together to address them. So my tip would be to not force a collaboration, but to let it develop organically such that people can evaluate the utility of a team. I hope that does that answer my answer your question.
Yes, I think he also responded over chat and wants to thank you for your answer.
Okay, all right.
So we received another question for you, Dr. Thomas. So I'll just ask the question. So how to network and find international co-PIs? Especially during the COVID pandemic, how did you go ahead during the COVID? How did you go ahead with finding and networking with co-PIs? Please share your experience.
Yeah, so a large reason why this was put together was because I was familiar with Dr. Arumbagam's work from several years. I'm also very familiar with Dr. Srivastava's work, and I think so. Why both of these PIs don't exactly work in this area? I think there are many similar questions that come up in the areas that they function as well, that they work in as well. And we happen to, Dr. Arumugam, I met in a meeting and we stayed in touch for a long time. Dr. Srivastava is also, we end up meeting each other quite frequently. So it's out of, it's not something that was born in a short period of time. I think these are people that you've always known. And that you've always had at the back of your mind. I think it's largely, the team has come together from the realization that when these complementary expertise can be put together, I think we should be able to ask some really exciting questions. And during the pandemic, I mean, obviously, communications were disrupted, but that still never came in the way of us exchanging ideas. In fact, it was relatively easier because work per se in the lab was not going on because labs were shut, and we could get time to focus on discussing and putting together the proposal. So there's no additional effort that one requires to put a team together. I think it emerges from the fact that if you find partners who appreciate the value of a collaboration, then that in itself should constitute a team.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. We have answered a lot of questions, and I believe there are a few more. So if, as again, I'm reminding you to write to our email ID. You can see it on the screen at team.science@indiaalliance.org. So please feel free to write to us. Before we end, please allow me to make some time for a few announcements. To remind you again, the call for application for the Team Science grant is currently open. The application deadline is 21st April 2023. We hope this webinar has helped you to understand the application process better. So if any of your friends or colleagues missed out on today's session, they can always follow us through the recording, which will be up on the India Alliance YouTube channel within a few days. Also, please keep following us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn to keep yourself updated about our other grants, fellowships, workshops, and any other announcements. Of course, I would like to thank today's speakers, Dr. Thomas, along with our grant advisors, both of our grant advisors, Divya and then we can, I would like to thank all the participants who attended to this workshop with so much and gave so much of your time to us. So thank you all once again, and please do not hesitate to apply for our grants and fellowships. And thanks to Abdul for being on the back end. And so thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for your participation.